Good morning and welcome back to Beat the Bookie, the nation's best college sports betting show. There's something about when that air starts to just get a little bit chilly. When I walk outside in the morning and I need a jacket, that means it's football season, and that means I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than sitting in this desk talking about our football bets of the week with all of you, whether you're sitting on a couch watching this on your TV or watching it on your small handheld device. We appreciate you being here. We're happy that you're here. I've got a lot of bets to go over with all of you today, but we're going to start with paying some homage to our hosts from last semester. We're going to check out our spring semester recap. Now, Beat the Bookie ended in the red, but that happens with betting. We all know how it goes. But at number one, we have the man, the myth, the legend. You've probably heard of him. If not, you've probably heard him before. Liam Griffin with a profit of $57.74. And I think that's so notable because LG came on here in the fall of last year and he lost $60. But he didn't let that keep him down. He came back. He won 57 of it back. You know, he's still about $2 down there, but that's okay. That was really big for the show to win that back. Ethan Frank, also known as Diesel. We got Braden Reed. And at number four, we got Jesse Cook. And I feel like I can't anchor this show without giving him a shout out for the greatest Beat the Bookie week of all time with a $350 profit. Very impressive stuff from Jesse. Really just makes me want to have a nice hot cup of tea on a Saturday afternoon, as he so often does. But with that being said, we've done our talking about the past. Let's look at the future. We're going to take a look at our top three games of the week.
Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money! Show me the money!
Let's dive into those top three games of the week. The first one, we have our first top 10 matchup of the college football season. We've got the number 4 Texas Longhorns visiting number 9 Michigan, one of the best atmospheres in all of sports, one of the largest stadiums in the world, and I think Texas is going to walk in there and spank Michigan. If you watched Michigan's game last week against Fresno State, they really started pretty slow. It did not look very inspiring if you are a Michigan fan. They lost a lot from that national championship winning team. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh is not coaching there anymore, but they looked slow, and that's something that you absolutely cannot do against Texas. Texas has so much speed on the outside. They just got Isaiah Bond transferring over from Alabama. We know that Quinn Ewers can sling the rock. They showed that last week when they walloped Colorado State. I think Texas is going to walk in there and win this game by 2 scores. I think they're definitely going to cover that 7.5-point spread. So, Longhorns, the eyes of Texas are always upon you, but now the eyes of Beat the Bookie are upon you, and those are some watchful eyes. So I'm really excited to circle back on this game at some point. But with that being said, let's move ahead to our next big game of the week. We've got number 15 Tennessee visiting number 24 NC State, and that's a big spread to cover. That's 9.5 right there. But I think that Tennessee is going to be able to do it. NC State really did not look good last week playing Western Carolina. It was a 1-score game. Western Carolina was winning for a lot of the third quarter. NC State eventually pulled away. I do think that Grayson McCall, the NC State quarterback, does have that Carolinas type aura of a quarterback, maybe a little bit more so than the likes of Mitch Trubisky or Drake May. I do think that he's a good player. I just don't know if everything around him is going to be enough. I think Tennessee is going to walk in there and make a statement, and I think that's going to be very important for them heading into that ringer of an SEC schedule that they've got coming up here in October. Now, moving on to maybe our least exciting or appealing game of the week. We have Iowa versus Iowa State. This is a classic rivalry. It's always a game that I sit down on the couch in week 2 or week 3 and I say, oh, Iowa versus Iowa State, that's so fun. It's non-conference, it's a state rivalry, it's gonna be a great game, and it's gonna be fun, and it's always not the most beautiful game of football to watch. But it will usually be a good game. It usually is hotly contested, and that's why we see this 3-point spread. I do think Iowa is going to cover it. Pretty much all I have written down for this game is not appealing to watch, corn battle, probably not a lot of offense, but I have some Iowa connections. The Hawks hold a special place in my heart. My mom went there, and my very good friend Justin Speakerman went there. Shout out to them. Go Hawks. I'm going to go with Iowa covering the 3-point spread on this game. Let's see what our producers think. Hopefully they agree with me. Oh, wow, what a nice high school picture of me. Shout out to the Frem Vikings wrestling program. That is my senior photo. Okay, so looks like the C-suite agrees with me on Texas. Thanks, guys. I'm really confident about that pick. I'm hyped up on the Longhorns this year. A little bit of a difference there on NC State and Tennessee. That's a big spread to cover. I understand our differences there, but I do think the Volunteers are going to play pretty well in that game. And it looks like we agree on Iowa as well. Happy to see us agree on 2 out of 3 there. hopefully Tennessee is gonna give me the edge over you guys there. I would be happy to see it on my first time hosting Beat the Bookie. But with that being said, let's move into my next picks for games of the week. So the first one we're gonna go with is a team that I grew up watching, the Michigan State Spartans, and they've got a 9.5-point spread to cover at Maryland. Now, much like their foes from across the state in Ann Arbor, Michigan State didn't look great last week against FAU, but I think 9.5 is a big spread in a game that definitely could be pretty close. I think there's good value on that. I'm going $10 on that Michigan State at Maryland game for Michigan State to cover 9.5. I don't necessarily think that they're going to win that game, but I think it'll be closer than a 10-point game. So far we've got $40 delegated. I had 10 on each of those 3 big games. I'm just so excited to host that I forgot to say how much money that I have on it, but I had 10 on each of those. And let's do another $10 bet here. We've got Marshall with a 20.5-point spread at Virginia Tech. Now, if you watched Virginia Tech in week 1, you probably weren't very impressed. They lost in overtime at Vanderbilt. They really didn't look good. And this has the feel of one of those games that kind of happens in Virginia or the Carolinas early in the year where it's an Old Dominion or a Marshall walks into a Power 5 stadium and pulls off an upset. I think that's entirely possible. What I think is definitely possible is that Marshall covers this 20.5-point spread. Matthew McConaughey will not be coaching them. That's a shout out to my favorite sports movie of all time, We Are Marshall, but I still think they'll be able to cover that 20.5-point spread without him and ride off into the sunset with Ventura Highway playing. Such a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you really should check it out. But let's move on to my favorite game of the week. We've got Kansas at Illinois. Now, the last time that Kansas visited Champaign was in 1968. LBJ, that's not LeBron James, that's Lyndon B. Johnson, was president, and the Jayhawks won big. They won the game by 40. That was in an election year. Now it's once again an election year. I promised them I wouldn't talk about it, but here we are. It's once again an election year. The Rock Chalk offense has been on fire for 2 years straight. Brett Bielema, the head coach of Illinois, was saying that he'll have to defend Jalen Daniels like he's a running back. He's a true dual threat. So everything pretty much points to Kansas winning this game big. So what am I going to go with? Well, I'm going to go with $10 on Illinois covering that 5.5-point spread. Why are we doing that? Because hail to the orange. This is betting. Sometimes you have to throw logic out the window. Memorial Stadium is going to be sold out. I spent my childhood going to Memorial Stadium and watching those games. It's a really fun environment down there in Champaign. Maybe the stadium pulse factor will help Illinois out, but 5.5 is, that's still a close game. They might not win, but I do think they cover that. I'm going to go $10 on Illinois to cover that 5.5-point spread against Kansas. And moving on, we have the 47th meeting between Arkansas and Oklahoma State, but the first one since 1980. So interesting how long our great sport of college football has been along. But Arkansas covered a 50-point spread last week. That's good juju for betting. Now Oklahoma State did too. That's okay. I'm feeling the good juju on the 50-point spread. The Oklahoma State players will definitely be flipping the iPad for the NIL tip money. I don't know if anybody saw this, but they have little QR codes on the back of their helmets where you could scan them and donate to their NIL collective. Super interesting thing. Kind of funny to imagine Ollie Gordon running into the end zone and then flipping that iPad around and being like, oh, if you want to include a tip, go ahead here. But speaking of money and tipping, Oklahoma State, they have Ollie Gordon. They look great already. But Arkansas allowed 7 yards of rushing last week, and that was against AR Pine Bluff. But I do think that bodes well for them facing Ollie Gordon. And the one last point I want to make about this game is a weather point. People around CitrusTV know that I love weather. I love covering it. I'm very into it. So I did a little weather research on this game, and I found out that in Stillwater at kickoff, it'll only be 74 degrees, which means it'll be low heat, which means it'll also be low humidity. So Mike Gundy's mullet will not be fluffed as it normally should be. So I'm going with Arkansas. I'm putting $10 on them to cover that 7.5-point spread. Woo pig. Shout out Nick Luttrell, our former glorious sports king. We miss that guy. This is a good value bet. I'm going with 7.5 for Arkansas to cover that. Now moving on to our future bet. I am going to go with a little bit of a hometown bet here. Now I've got 2 to show you guys today. The first one is centered on who I think is the Lisan El Gaib. Now that's a reference to the Dune movies if you haven't seen them. Got another movie recommendation for you. Come for the bets, get some movie recs as well. Caleb Williams, I am betting that he is going to be the leading rookie passer. Now this isn't really a crazy bet. It's really not all that improbable that Caleb Williams leads the field. He was the #1 pick He won the Heisman when he was in college. A lot of people have been calling him one of the best prospects since Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. I'm one of those people. I think he's going to be great. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be pretty good too, but Caleb Williams really has the weapons around him with the additions of Keenan Allen. They've got DeAndre Swift coming out of the backfield. They just re-signed DJ Moore to a larger contract. I'm really, really confident that Caleb is going to have a good season. And compared to the situations of the rest of the rookie quarterbacks in the NFL, I'm pretty confident that he is going to lead all rookies in passing. So I'm going to go $5 on that. And the second one, very related, probably a lot less likely to happen, but that's why we're doing it. This is betting. The Chicago Bears have plus 3,500 odds to win the Super Bowl. So you're saying there's a chance. There's always a chance. I'm going to throw another $5 on the Bears winning the Super Bowl, because if they eventually do, then I will be the ultimate champion of this show forever and ever. And I would love to see that, and I would probably cry tears of joy. But the Bears have put together a decent team. I don't think it's that improbable that they make the playoffs. Anything can happen in the playoffs. All I'm saying is that this is great value. I'm throwing $5 on the Chicago Bears to be the Super Bowl champions. And before we get out of talking about the futures, let's take a look at some of the active futures we have from some of the hosts last semester. We have Joe Puccio for Aaron Judge to be the home run king, to lead the league once again. And we have Steven Sklar talking about the Yankees winning the AL. So we have some double Yankees bets there. We'll have to see how those play out as we roll through September here and right into October. But I like that 3 and 4 right there with the double Bears. You know, we're hoping. We love the Bears, and I'm feeling very hopeful about the season. And I hope that this isn't clipped and used against me on this show if they're very bad. Everybody's favorite part of the show, something that my buddies and I from home in Chicago like to call cooking up a lay. We've got a parlay for you. I'm calling it the Blue Bloods parlay. And the first one, you might have noticed that there was no action on this Nebraska-Colorado game for the whole show until now, and that's because I'm very confident in it, and I won it in my parlay. I've got Nebraska covering that 7.5-point spread. Hey, Dion, Nebraska brought their own luggage, and it's American Tourister. I don't know. Who cares? I do think Nebraska is going to have a very good year. Dylan Raiola, he's Lil Cuzzo of Patrick Mahomes. I think if I was a college quarterback and I looked anything like Patrick Mahomes, I would do everything in my power to look exactly like him. I think that the Mohawk is giving him special powers. Mahomes had a good game on Thursday night. I think Raiola is going to have a good game. I think Colorado's really going to struggle defensively, but I do think that it'll be high scoring, and I do think Nebraska is going to win by over 7.5 points, which brings me to my next game. Another thing I'm very confident about. You'll hear me talking about this game the entire show. I really do think Texas is going to walk in there and spank Michigan. I think they're going to cover that 7.5-point spread. And I'm calling this parlay here a little bit of the blue blood parlay. You'll notice some of these classic old logos. Shout out to Jordan Leonard, the producer, for pulling those up for me. Don't those just look awesome? I mean, I absolutely love those logos. And you can see some blue bloods here. We have Texas, Nebraska, Michigan, and Colorado as well, but I do think they're going to end up on the losing side. And speaking of that Nebraska game, once again, like I said, I'm very confident about my picks here. I'm going over 56.5 points. I do think it's going to be very high scoring. I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense going on. Shedeur Sanders is an excellent quarterback. I'm sure Colorado's offense will be clicking. I don't think their defense is going to be doing anything. So that's my parlay. I'm calling it the Blue Bloods parlay. It kind of works with the theme of the old logos. I'm going Nebraska to cover 7.5. I'm going Texas to cover 7.5. And I'm going Nebraska, Colorado to be over 56.5. And with that, we're going to finish up with our recap. Starting with the Longhorns, like I said, the eyes of Texas and Beat the Bookie are upon them. I've got them covering that 7.5-point spread at Michigan. Moving on, we've got Tennessee. I've got them covering that 9.5-point spread at NC State. I've got Iowa covering that 3-point spread versus Iowa State. Maryland and Michigan State. Give me the Spartans on that one. Go green, baby. I've got them covering that 9.5-point spread. I think that'll be a closer game than people think. Moving on to Virginia Tech and Marshall, 20.5 points for the Thundering Herd to cover. I'm going with Marshall covering that spread. Moving on, like I said, hail to the orange, baby. I've got Illinois covering that 5.5-point spread versus Kansas. Woo Pig, we've got Arkansas covering that 7.5-point spread. And then for my futures, Caleb Williams, most rookie pass yards. I think that's very feasible. I think it's very probable that that will happen. And speaking of probable, I've also got $5 on the Chicago Bears winning the Super Bowl. Boy, that would be a dream. And then the parlay, just like we just went over, we've got the Blue Bloods. We've got Nebraska covering. We've got Texas covering. We've got that Nebraska and Colorado game going over 56.5 points. I'm not an expert, but I am here to tell you that you should bet on all of those games. And that is exactly how everything is going to unfold this weekend. I'm very confident. Like I said, so happy to have you guys back with us. So happy that football and school is back. We love it here on Beat the Bookie, and hopefully next week we will be going over very good results from those expert betting picks that I just gave you. Thank you so much, and enjoy your game day.